Welcome back to another episode of the Hodge-Cast. Today, I'm in good company as we've got, everyone on this show knows this guest. He's our most viewed episode to date. It's the one and only Jon Wedger. Welcome back, Jon.
It's an absolute pleasure.
No it is.
Worries.
And we're filming in Liverpool here, so you've just drove up from London. Nice drive.
Yeah, it's a good city. I've always got on well.
We're doing quite a lot of with Stephen French at the moment, who's quite well known over here for good or bad reasons.
Yeah, I was. I got invited up to do a podcast which has come out with Stephen in Bootle, and he's just featured in a documentary. So I've just brought out a documentary called Redemption, and Stephen's one of three that I interview, and it's good. So we get three interviewees. Each of them are people that really were a danger to society. You know, he won't mind me saying that. So we get a guy called Chris Lambriano, an ex-gangster from the Cray era, member of the Cray firm, went away for the murder of Jack the Hat McVitie with his brother Tony. Very notorious in their day. We get Stephen French. Of course, he's the devil, the tax man, and he doesn't need any sort of explaining. And another guy, he's not so well known, but in the East End of London, he's incredibly well known. A guy called Ez Catel, an African immigrant really as a child, put in the care system, fostered out, and went on to become quite a formidable character in the old sort of security and protection industry in London. And all three of them were classed as a danger to society, really, and nothing could change them. But they did. They found God, and they've turned their lives around, and they go on to do a lot of good work. And so I thought, well, what better than for me, an ex-copper, to interview them and say, well, the police couldn't change her, the courts, the penal system couldn't. What did? And it's really weird to see the parallels in their upbringing, you know, how society treated them, and then the violence, the extreme violence, the money that came out of it, and then this instant 180 turn that just totally flipped it. And all of them have gone on to do incredibly well with that same, it's weird, isn't it, that same energy that they put into criminality, that they put into doing good. And I mean, Ez, he runs a church, you know, formidable. And Stephen is saving so many young men from suicide. He's really moving forward. And Chris is just so well known in his campaign against anti-knife crime. And so it's great. So it's called Redemption. It's on Vimeo. It's £3 to watch it. So, we yet to see how many we've sold, but, you know, and I'm going to do another one. So the format is who was you, the change, who are you now? So I want to do one with three women that have got, it doesn't necessarily have to be crime. You know, we got one woman who was very heavy into witchcraft and the occult, turned her life around. And so I want to do it on three women. And the next one I want to do is, because I started doing work with the Gypsy and Traveller community, which was just a massive eye-opener. I mean, it really was. And to get accepted into that environment was quite something, especially for an ex-copper. And actually they came to me, and they were great. And it's really weird because it was like my professional nemesis, really, you know, drug dealers, gypsies, you know, men of violence, and me coming from the line I come from. And now that is, so my book that I'm nearly finished, called Ironic, which sort of outlines that irony, you know, that is my life. But I want to do a redemption on members of the Traveller community, and really sort of the issues they face, because they're still sort of on the periphery of society. And it's really strange when you get in there, you realise how cut off they are. And one of the things that got me with them was, one of them said to me, Jon, when they go cashless, we're effed. That's us finished. And he went, we are a cash culture. And once it goes cashless, that's the gypsy culture finished. Boom, gone overnight. And it's strange that something that, you know, as rudimentary as that can absolutely almost create a genocide. So it's far-reaching. But it's been a journey. It really has been a journey. So any chance I get to really come out there and impart a bit of knowledge or give an update, I'll happily do it.
And what I love about you as well, Jon, because I've been following your work, and obviously this is our second podcast, is a lot of people come on these platforms and it's a bit of smoke and mirrors. Whereas with yourself, it's coming from a very good place. It's coming from the heart.
Yeah.
You're passionate. I mean, you drove how many hours to get here today, and I think it's admirable, that, mate. And I think that's why you get such good exposure with what you're doing, because people buy into you as a person.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I started fundraising, and the money was going to forward the campaign. And really, seeing as what podcasters can make, TikTokers and all that, what they're making. I mean, you look at this guy, HS TikToky, you see him, that Harrison fella. And who's the other one? Who's the northern guy, Mashtag Brady, who just shoves crap down his gob? They're making horrific amounts of money. Even like people like Bonnie Blue and things like that. Does it benefit society? No, it don't. It benefits them, but it's big money very quick. And I sort of got in on the internet broadcasting in the early days, really, but I had no idea what I was doing. And in 2018, I was Facebook's fastest growing content provider. I had 1 million views a month, more than one of the national newspapers, right? And they wrote to me and said, look, but I had no idea of monetization. I didn't know how it worked. I had no one really with me to help me. Someone did come on board and they stole a load of money off me, stole nearly £10,000 off me, which I didn't even know I'd made, and they put it into their account, and that was the end of that. But I started raising money just through charitable campaigns, but it was endurance stuff. So I'd walk my dog from London to Manchester on the canals. I swam around the Isles of Scilly, which 17 miles, and no one's done it. They've done the Inter thing, but I did the whole lot. Cycled, found an old bike in a canal, cleaned it up, cycled it from Parliament to Penzance, and just rose money as I went. And that money I was giving to various charities. One was to do with the grooming gangs in Rotherham. There's a charity there that helped the girls. One was run by an ex-gangster. It was called Put Down a Knife, Save a Life. And the other one was to Ghislaine Maxwell, who worked for the lay community rehab centre. So I was sort of palming in that. But when you're campaigning for child abuse and there's money involved, people think you're profiteering out their misery, and you get this hatred and this trolling. And I wasn't used to it because I didn't expect anyone that would take issue with what I was doing. But they did. And you get jealousy, you get all sorts, because my rise to prominence was meteoric. I wasn't prepared for it. Within a year, my name was getting mentioned in Parliament. I'll get recognised in the street, national papers, everything. It was just huge. And within the underworld circles and things like that. And I just wasn't prepared for it. And I wasn't prepared for the trolling. And I just thought, well, I'm going to knock some of this on the head. I'll just stick to it. Don't get caught up with the money side of it all. And I don't want to make money out of people's misery. They're right in that. I don't want to do it. But I want to raise awareness. My whole stance is to raise awareness of child abuse, the sheer scale of child abuse, and the fact that it is covered up, and the lengths that society will go to cover it up. And look, the devil does things for more than one reason. It's not simple as normal criminality. And because I endured a lot of punishment in getting to the stage I'm at that qualify me to speak out, so I'm aware of what the government will do. But one of the things is that when you stand up and speak out, you've got to be clean. And the police tried to imprison me on 9 occasions. And someone said, weren't you worried? I said, well, of course, but I end up living in a world of fear. And then when I had my moment, when my son was dying and everything else, so this is when I had my conversion to Christianity, and I read Psalm 23, and it says, you will fear no evil, and I realised I'm not going to have fear. I'm not going to fear, and it made me fight back, and I replaced the fear with the faith. But I knew that what could they do, because I had done nothing wrong. But some people, they speak out, but they've got many skeletons in the closet. And I sometimes think that's a foolish position. But it's called a compromise, and they're compromised, And this is something that we will discuss, because of the content of today, is the fact that it is imperative for those in the conspiracy to get dirt on people. And if they can't get dirt on you, you're a problem. You're of no use to them, but you're also a problem. And you just got to be clean. And that was my mission, just to be clean. I just wanted to be clean. And, that's the reason for my documentary Redemption, and how people can do it. And they can. Because, the sins of the past, it will sink you in the end. And you've got to come to a point of realisation where, do you want it? It's a heavy weight you need to carry around, and it's time to drop it. But in doing so, it's a bit like giving up alcohol, giving up drugs and all that. You look back and you realise that you've relied on these things for so long, and that they're an excuse for your bad behaviour. You can offset your bad behaviour on the fact, I was drunk, or I was off my head, or I was whatever it was. And when you sort of ditch them, you're pretty vulnerable because you're on your own. It's just yourself and your own volition to deal with, So, and that's that. But I try and keep it as honest as the law will allow you, And in writing my book, it's madness because it makes me laugh. Having spent my working life in the police, and especially in the early days of the 1990s when it was crazy times, And the guys I worked with had joined in the 70s when it was even more. It was just madness back then. And what we dealt with and how we dealt with it, some of it was highly illegal. Can I put it down? No way. There's no way I could put it. And it's a shame because I would innocently love to pull it down, but you can't. And so when you see things like the Sweeney, Life on Mars, you think, did that go on? Yeah. And worse, and worse. But that guy, Chopper Reed, he, in one of his interviews, that crazy Aussie gangster fella, he said that when you write your autobiography, never tell the truth, because like him, it got him an extra 5 years in prison because he grasped himself up. Yeah. So I've got to be careful I don't grasp myself up. I don't grasp other people up. And it's blatant, intentional, spiteful criminality, because that's not me, but rules got bent, and they got bent in a way that it was illegal, and that's as far as I'm prepared to go on that one.
Yeah. No, well, obviously, with your mission being about sort of child abuse and wanting to kind of expose that, as it were, obviously the stuff we're going to unpack on this interview, your expertise, let's say, can probably give a full examination of it. So obviously the one that's trending, it'll probably be on the thumbnail and the title of this video, the whole Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Now, I know we spoke on it very briefly, but that was more about Prince Andrew last time.
Yeah.
Kind of just give an overview, John, of who Jeffrey Epstein was. Obviously, we'll touch on the files as the conversation progresses, but just where he was and how he became to be.
Yeah, I think if you take it back a bit further, because you've got Jeffrey Epstein, I think a New Yorker, ethnically Jewish. It looks like the guy's a bit of an underachiever. He then ends up getting a job that's far above his ability. He's and he ends up as a maths teacher at a posh school. And from there he ends up going to work for one of the big commercial sort of trading companies. Is it Bear something or other? In the stock market, and that's sort of where it sort of goes, off the chart for him. And then he teams up with Ghislaine Maxwell. But when you look at her, you see this is something that I mentioned. I don't know whether I mentioned on it here or maybe on Sean Atwood's show or one of them when the P Diddy, Epstein stuff come out and went, listen, the British tail is what wags the American dog, right? What they're seeing over there, there's pop stars and that involved. Oh, come on. It's low-hanging fruit. Look at what we had. We had Dolphin Square and we had Elm Guest House. We had people at the heart of our establishment going in there and committing horrific sexual abuse and I don't know if we can say that word, serious sexual offending against young boys, right? We got people, one of the guy was a fellow called Nicholas Fairbairn, Lord Nicholas Fairbairn. He was an attendee of Elm Guest House, this bed and breakfast in southwest London, an opulent part of, middle England, the borders of Thames, in which it was a male brothel basically for young boys, and most came from the care homes. Right, we're looking at algorithms, and I'm going to tie it in with the Epstein thing, and Cyril Smith, Peter Morrison, good friends with Margaret Thatcher in the political realm. Cyril Smith, a very, very prominent cabinet minister. Nicholas Fairbairn was the advocate depute for Scotland. Advocate depute is the head of the justice system. So you got like the Home Secretary, and then you'll get their legal, like the Attorney General in the UK. In England, we've got the Attorney General, which is in charge of all the barristers and solicitors and all the serious case files, and everything really comes under him. He was that for the Procurator Fiscal in Scotland. So the CPS in Scotland is called the Procurator Fiscal, and the Attorney General out there is called the Advocate Depute. And Nicholas Fairbairn was in charge of that. Nicholas Fairbairn was linked in with a guy called Bob Henderson. Both of them were QCs. Bob Henderson's nickname was Dirty Bob, who was connected to child abuse, murder of rent boys. And Nicholas Fairbairn even raped Bob Henderson's daughter when she was very young. She's come forward and spoken out. But Scotland, like all of the UK, had terrible revelations of systemic and institutional child abuse in the care homes, the residential homes, these places of so-called benevolence that were set up by philanthropists and everything else, such as Dr. Bernardo, and Dr. Bernardo. This came out in the recent government inquiry, the findings of the IICSA, the government sanctioned, independent investigation. Dr. Bernardo was responsible for the trafficking of 40,000 children into domestic servitude and sexual slavery in what's termed the New World. He auctioned them. And then when you say Dr. Bernardo, people think, oh, what a fantastic guy. No, he wasn't. He was the biggest procurer and trader in children, and these children went out to places like Australia, out to the work institutes in Canada, where they were raped and tortured, and some of them died. In Canada, they suffered horrifically. They were selling, there was one case of a young kid, Dr. Bernardo sold a child at an auction. This kid was very, very young, went off to a farm where the guy running it, his wife had died, and he was totally illiterate and couldn't read or write, and basically kept the kid like a dog. And the kid starved to death and was found next to a dog, beaten and starved to death and whipped. Appalling what went on. There's a film called Sunshine and Oranges about the kids, called them the Bindon Boys, that got sent out as young as 8 into hard graft, stonemasonry and foundation digging, 8-year-old kids in the Australian outback, to this home. I think it might have been the Bindon Monastery or something, but they're called the Bindon Boys, that's what they were termed. And the brothers there were raping these young boys. And of course, a lot of them went on to lives of alcoholism and violence, and then clogged up the prison system, and then suicide comes next. So when you look at what's coming out in America, we've had it. And what happened? The government comes in, they said, right, we're going to deal with this. We're going to make sure that, the public get justice, the victims get justice. And the first thing they do is they attack the victims, and they start imprisoning the victims for making false allegations. And they give them such heavy sentences, it sends a shockwave through the survivor community. Shut your mouth. Especially where there's establishment figures involved. Because this causes political influence and it causes political instability. Therefore, it comes to the attention of the intelligence services, and it's blackmail. It's all blackmail. And if you look at what is acceptable, what do people find acceptable? I'm putting together a talk about acceptable paedophilia, right? And there are some people, like Sidney Cook, very notorious, child murderer, child rapist, organised. And yeah, he looks like a rat. They call him Hissing Sid. He just looks like, if you were to draw what a PDF file looks like, it would be him. So we can hate him. But what about Elvis Presley? You know, he was hanging around with Priscilla when she was 14. What does that make him? Jerry Lee Lewis. Look at Pete Townsend from The Who got a caution for, put on the sex offenders register for his nefarious paedophilic activities. We accept them. Why do people look Michael Jackson? Why are people still listening to Michael Jackson records when what he was and what he represented was wrong? And we accept it because they are the human face of it, and we can make jokes about them. Oh, that's just quirkiness. Look at Bill Wyman hanging around with Mandy Smith from the Rolling Stones. He was hanging around with her from the age of 13. He was in his 50s. Oh, come on. But we make excuses for that, right? And same with politicians. This Nicholas Fairbairn, he was cast as an eccentric, right, because of his love of whiskey and the fact he would turn up a Prime Minister's Question Times in a kilt. And Thatcher said he was the most colourful and interesting front bencher, that they had, and he was a lord and everything else. He was having a clandestine secret affair with a woman called Esther Ranson, right? We all know who she is, and at the time she was setting up Childline. And let me tell you now, Childline, right? If you're in trouble and you need the police, you dial 999 and a 9. Why would you dial 0800 111 555? Why would you dial that? How many is that? What 10, 11 numbers? Dun, 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 dun. And you've got to remember that? A kid, 999, get it? When I worked on the child abuse investigations, we used to get referrals, and they would come through all different manner of channels, but mainly they come from social services or the schools, right? In all the time I worked there, dealt with one case out of the hundreds that came from Childline. They must have had thousands, maybe tens of thousands of referrals come to them from kids. Where were they? Where did they all go? Because they never ended up on our desk. And I worked in one of the biggest child abuse offices in the country. When the government launched an inquiry into these kids' homes, Scotland was the last place to do it. It went on the longest in Scotland. And the Scottish have got a very different attitude towards child welfare. They've got a very benevolent attitude towards child welfare. And the Scottish were historically always against children's homes, even to so much as the Scottish prison system used to allow kids to stay with the parent in prison, whereas in the rest of the UK they wouldn't allow that. They got put in a home. And Scotland said, no, kids should be kept together. So there was a need to really split Scotland up if you were looking at it from conspiratorial eyes. And they set up these respite homes to take kids out of the industrial impoverished places like Glasgow and things like that, and give the parents a break. That was the thing. So he sent one up in Perth called Forneath, and it was for girls. So it was for girls in respite and maladjusted girls. And basically it was a child brothel. That's what it turned into. The women that were running it were classed as vicious. They would whip them, they would beat them, and they would pimp them out. Young girls from primary school age up until secondary school age. And when the inquiry came around and the police did get involved, right, they took 20 girls and they were interviewed and they were shown pictures. Out of the 20, I think, I might get this wrong, but it's either 13 or 16. I'd have to look at my notes, but anyway, it's academic, it's semantical, that really. 13 or 16, so a majority of them picked one person out as their abuser, their rapist, and it was Nicholas Fairbairn. The head of the justice system from Scotland was actively going out there and selecting girls out of kids' homes so he and his cohorts in the legal system could rape these kids. And it got termed the magic circle because these were men in the legal profession that were raping kids with impunity, and they called it a magic circle because any allegations just disappeared. And one detective from Edinburgh, he did investigate it, and he had the same as me, told to shut your mouth and move on, right? Because it could have destroyed, the fabric of society. So people would, even like Margaret Thatcher seeing him as quirky and all that. No, he wasn't. He was a very dangerous predatory rapist. But when we look at him, Nicholas Fairbairn, come from aristocracy. His mother abandoned him at birth. His father didn't want to know. His father was a drunk anyway. He was placed into a school called Loretz, and it was a bit like Eton for Scotland. And when they did the inquiry, went out there and investigated these schools, they went to the impoverished schools and then to these wealthy fee-paying schools. And this is something I want to discuss about criminality, and it ties in with our topic, right? And they found this Loretz College, the abuse was so appalling. And examples of it was that there was a bed frame, a metal bed frame that they would put electricity on and tie the kids to it and electrocute them. There was a pit that they would dig a hole, put the kids in there, and the masters would urinate on them. I mean, what does that do to little kids? Plus the fact of the standard buggery and whippings and beatings, and then being put in a pit and urinated on, and then tied down, especially if your mother's abandoned you and you've got rejection, abandonment issues, well, it's just bred a monster. So this is what happens. You're breeding monsters, you know, and with criminality, so we take this area here, right? We take Liverpool, and one of the most feared gangsters that come out of here is Stephen French. And in his testimony, I don't want to talk for him, but he was in Walton Road Child Assessment Centre, and he went in as a kid nicknamed Smiler. Within years of coming out of that home where there was just non-stop abuse on some of these kids, he went on to become someone called the Devil. And they made him. And he openly says that. They made the Devil. They took Smiler and turned him into the Devil. You know, of course, his crimes were ones of violence, you know, and you've got the poverty and the racism and all that went with it. But when you've got people that have come from the privileged classes, the upper and the ruling classes, you know, they suffer as well. And I was approached by a guy, his father was a very well-known lord in England. And his father's got this museum, and it's one of his work in heritage museums. Is very, very famous guy. And his son has written a book, and it's all about the abuse. And his father was abusing him sexually, was raping him. And he said, not only was my father doing it, his father was a prominent politician as well. He said 9 members of Winston Churchill's cabinet were doing it to me as well. And he got sent off to the elite school called Eton, which has produced, I think, 11 prime ministers have come out of Eton. And they have a thing called the fagging system, where the older boys are given permission for the guidance and the discipline of the younger boys. And basically they get them to do all their little chores, but they cane them and they sexually assault them. And then that gets passed on because shit rolls downhill. So they've been bitten, they go on to bite. So when they're older, they do the same. So you're talking about young men whose first sexual experience is an older boy, whatever doing to him, masturbating them or raping them, whatever. No one's going to say anything because everyone's doing it. So it starts twisting you of what it's like and caning them. And when I was a detective on the Vice Unit, we used to raid brothels. We raided an upmarket. We raided them all from the bottom end crack house ones right up to the upmarket Mayfair ones in central London. We raided one in Mayfair, and when we went in, there was this guy, and I can only describe him as a bit like John Cleese, and you know, very, very posh. And he's got the suspenders for his socks. He's got his suit on, his trousers down, and he's being caned by a prostitute. And he said in the most plumiest accent when we kicked the door in, he said, "My God, officers, am I in trouble?" And he got told, "Put your trousers on and F off," you know, and he's running out trying to pull his trousers up. But he paid to be caned. And when I started doing a lot of work with profilers, I said to a profile, "What is it with the poshes and being caned and that?" And he said, it was a woman actually, she said to me, "Well, what it is that at that point in their life, they have no control. No control. So it could be caned or being buggered or whatever it might be. But they reenact it, and now they're in control." So, and it reminds them of their childhood. There's so many emotional and historic connections to it. They're reinventing that brokenness. But when someone's abused, their emotional clock stops. So you can get someone, a child, if you was into abusing kids, and what happens is we're made up of three parts. You've got your physical self, you've got your intellectual self, and you've got your emotional self, right? So imagine it like a snowman with three balls: the intellectual, the emotional, and then the physical. So you abuse a child, what's it going to do to that mind? It's going to crush their mind. But the mind's good, the mind's strong, the mind's clever, the mind is phenomenal, to be honest. Can they get over it? Yeah. Can they go on to achieve? Yes. In fact, they can go on to overachieve, because you'll get this mindset, this stoic attitude that no one will ever bully me again. You know, I'm going to show the world who I am. I'm not nothing. I'm not rubbish. I am going to prove myself, because there's a need to prove yourself. And they can go on to do very well, right? There's no evidence to say that they don't. Physically, can someone who's been abused go on to do well? Yeah. No one will hurt me like I've been hurt. There's nothing you lot can do to me that hasn't been done to me, right? If you watch, the BBC did a fantastic two-parter on the Falklands War. It might have been Channel 4, about the Falklands War, because it's like 50 years on from the Falklands War. And they interview the parachute regiment, 2 Para, who bore the brunt of this hand-to-hand fighting. And the ones who really got affected by it came from normal homes. The ones that were like, well, who didn't sink into depression, they all came from child abuse. They all come from sexual abuse. And they all went on to join the SAS. And they interviewed 5 SAS soldiers. 3 of them were sexually abused in the care homes as kids. Right, and you'll see that with elite combatants, you know, boxers, you know, MMA and all that. You'll get a lot of people that have come from troubled backgrounds going into that, because no one's ever going to hurt me, you know. They're still fight. And if you look at the testimony of that guy, Lenny McLean, you know, the bare knuckle fighter, he saw everyone as his stepdad abusing him. And when I look at him, I know a guy very similar to him, and I think the abuse was probably a lot more severe and personal than he makes out, because of the hatred. And I knew someone very similar, but it will kill you. So you can go on to overachieve massively if you've been abused. But the one thing you can't do if you don't get the right help, and that is your emotional self. That child, the clock, the emotional maturity and the growing stops that day. So the younger someone's abused, the more emotionally effed up they are. And if you look at like a child soldier, they're used because they're callous, ruthless. I mean, kids do horrible things. Kids will pull legs off frogs and, you know, and insects and all that, you know. They do spiteful things. And there's a selfishness in children as well, you know, because that's natural. You've got to be naturally narcissistic. And that's why as adults, we have to teach kids to share and learn. Because if we don't boundary a kid, they become narcissistic. So you screw a kid up by giving them no love or too much love. So these new sort of, you know, wokey parents who don't agree with boundaries and that, they're screwing their kids up. They're setting themselves up for a life of emotional damage, really. You know, so that's our job, is to do that. So, but when someone's been emotionally damaged, you see it in adult life, because me and you can sit here and we can get to points of variance. You know, we can differ in our opinion, and we can talk about it, discuss and agree to disagree. Someone who's come from abuse can't do that. It's like road rage. They'll go from someone cutting them up to jumping out the car and smashing their face in, because that's the emotional damaged self. And you see that in people. And especially in my job that I was doing, you know, interviewing victims and survivors and sex offenders, you saw it in them. And it was my job to aggravate that broken child and get them to talk. And there was many ways you could do it. But you look at someone's value system, what they treat and everything else, and that's how you sort of do it. So the reason I'm saying this is that when you're dealing with crime, the majority of crime, especially in an area such as Liverpool back in the day, it would have just been the working and lone classes, just causing crimes of just disorder and dishonesty, you know, thieving and beating each other up. Do the posh people do it? No, not really, you know. It's not their thing. Do the low and working classes do it? Yeah, of course they do. And there'll be certain areas that are worse, and in them areas it'll be a certain family. 3 or 4 families that cause chaos for everyone because they're totally screwed up. So we can pigeonhole crime. But that's why they don't heavily police or prioritise sex crime, because you can't pigeonhole it. Because in a society now that's all about equality, not equity, and diversity and wokeness, well, paedophilia and Satanism comes to that, are way ahead of that. Way ahead of that. They've been the most diverse, all-inclusive category ever. They're not heterosexual. They're not homosexual. They're not bisexual. They're what they jokingly term trisexual. They will try anything. You know, they don't really have a genre. They have a liking, but then boundaries are easily broken down. And that's the emotionally damaged self in there. And it's across every strata of society. It's through every caste system. It's through every nationality, every religious group. You know, someone said to me once, they're Romanian, they went, in Romania, we don't have paedophiles. And I just laughed. I said, what a load of nonsense. Absolute load of nonsense. Someone else said, you don't get many black paedophiles. Again, a load of nonsense. There are as many, or the percentage of paedophiles in the black community is the same in the Jewish community, and the same in the white community, the ginger community, whatever it is. It's the same. It's the same percentage. And because it's the damaged self. So it doesn't know any economic boundaries. And therein lies its secret and its power, because it's a weakness and it's a yearning and it's something people will walk over hot coals to do. And the world of espionage knows this, and it knows its value, and it knows that it can be coercive. So years ago, in say, take British politics, if an MP was gay, for example, right? I'll go back a bit further. In the days of a chivalrous society, if a member of Parliament was having an extramarital affair, pressure could be lent on that person to toe the line. Otherwise, they'll be exposed for being a cheat and an all-round cad, you know, and not gentlemanly behaviour, and it'd be destructive, destructive in British society to be cheating and having an affair. But then them days went. And then, you know, up until not so long ago, it was illegal to be homosexual in the military. You know, especially when I was growing up, that was part of the vetting process. If anyone wanted to join the army and that, they would filter them out if they were gay, because it had blackmail value, you see, and they knew it. I got a job offered to me, and I had to go through very, very high level vetting, very intrusive vetting. The highest level you get, you know, we're talking the intelligence services level, because I got offered a job to deal with top secret information and the gathering of it, because I was used by the Metropolitan Police, because I've got this ability to communicate, and people would tell me stuff that they decided to utilise my skills and send me off into the prison system and everywhere else in organised crime and get information and convert people into an informant, offer people deals. This sort of makes me a bit qualified to talk about the topic we're on about. And I spent a long time in the prison system and getting caught up. At the time, it was majority around the Turkish Mafia, and getting those in trouble, out of trouble, and offering them deals. But they had to come up with the goods. They could be looking at 30 years in prison. One case, a guy was looking at 15 years in prison for importation of heroin, and I ended up in quite an infamous Scottish prison. I went to meet with a guy, and we broke a deal. He got 2 years. 2 years. That's the power of it, you know. But he was now in my pocket, you know. And the one thing is, the tail can't wag the dog. When you deal with informants, and this is the key to this, is informants, right? You are always in charge. As a handler, the moment they push that envelope, they're gone. They are sacked. They are gone, right? They have to adhere to the rules. You don't. They do, right? So it's got huge value, right? And it gets used. So, like gays, years ago, you could blackmail gay people. Well, you know, we've seen you in this club. We've seen you there. You know, you're gonna play the game. I mean, they tried to do it with George Michael, and Sony said, the world can't know you're gay because too many young girls follow you, and that's the majority of our sales is young teenage girls. And if they find out you're gay, that's it, we're screwed. So he tried to blackmail him. And what did George Michael do? He went and made that song Come Outside. And he actually held him to task. And, power to George Michael for doing it. And, he turned around and said, there's no way you're blackmailing me. I'm gay. You all know I'm gay. You made a fortune out of me because I'm in this industry, because I'm gay and blah, blah, blah. No way am I betraying it, And what could they do? There's not much they could do. In the, ultimately, the whole thing just, backfired on him, and he had a premature death. But he stood up for what he was, and he really did take on the beast, that guy. So I think he was very brave in doing it. But now, of course, so what? In fact, the opposite now. You get praised if you have a sexual proclivity the other way than if you are what's called straight and normal, And then cocaine, we know you're doing cocaine, and you can bribe someone. This secret out, but now, so what? So if you're gay, you're cheating on women, you're doing drugs, so what? What does it matter? But the one last bastion of decency is you don't touch kids. You don't touch kids, right? As much as the Labour government has tried to normalise paedophilia, and it has, by having annexing a lobbyist group called PI, Paedophile Information Exchange, which was a pro-paedophile lobbyist group that say annexed themselves to the Labour Party, was patronised by Margaret Hodge, Patricia Hewitt and Harriet Harman. All three of them long-serving female members of Parliament, left-wingers. All three of them became like right honourables. They became right honourables. So they got basically anointed by the Queen, in their parliamentary careers. So they're classed as honourable people, and they're not. And because they were behind this group that wanted the age of consent between a man and a boy to be 4 years old. Harriet Harman pushed for the age of consent between women and grown-up men to be 14. I mean, what a despicable woman. One of them, I think it was Hodge, Tony Blair made a minister for children. So when we're looking at the heart of the establishment, we're looking at America with the Trump administration. Look, we've had it here. We had a member of Parliament called Jeffrey Dickens, who had files of politicians involved in abusing kids. Right, he handed it to the Home Secretary, to Leon Britton, and it went missing. Later on, Tom Watson, the MP, did the same. He handed a file of politicians involved in the abuse of children to Leon Britton. Again, it went missing. Leon Britton, the fastest ever promoted Home Secretary, right? But powerfully connected, to strong Jewish lobbyist groups. And I don't want to go down that line, but that's the fact. And again, he was protected. It was only posthumously that it came out that numerous allegations had been made against him. And I'd even heard it from police officers from the Central Paedophile Unit that he'd been looked at, right? Allegations against boys, and the fact that he used to like to whip them and get them to dress up in women's underwear. And a woman approached me, and she made women's underwear, and she told me that she'd been making pants, bras and knickers for him and a guy called Stephen Milligan, MP. And she said to me, I don't mind Stephen guy because he's quite sweet, but the other one, she said, the Jewish guy's horrible. He's a real pig. Of course, it was him. And a file of photographs were called the Selenki tapes by Dover Customs seized. They said it was photos, but the rumours are it was videos of a naked young boy sat on the lap of Leon Britton whilst Leon Britton's wearing women's underwear. And I took it to the police and said, I know who made that. There's a good chance I can back this up. Never went anywhere. I gave the information to the Minister of Policing and Crime. He took it to Theresa May, and he backed me in what I was doing when I whistle blew. And 2 days later, he was removed from his post as a Cabinet Minister for Policing and Crime. And this is Home Secretary. 117 files were handed to Theresa May of politicians and known prominent persons involved in child abuse. They went missing. They went missing. So if we look at the algorithm of this, how is that any different to Donald Trump now saying, despite his claims, I will expose this at the highest level, and he turned around and he said that who was it that Bill Clinton's got to worry about the island stuff, referring to Epstein Island. He's got a lot to worry about, and I'm going to show his file. And now he's denying the file's existence. The man's an absolute liar, right? And people sit there and think he's a saviour. He ain't a saviour. There's only one saviour, right? You know, and that's a man that died on the cross. It ain't Donald Trump. Donald Trump is lying. He is lying. And he's lying because he's in deep. And because of what has gone on is no different to what went on in the United Kingdom. No different, right? It will bring down the establishment. But there's connections here, right? There's connections here to the intelligence agency. No more so Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, MI6 and the CIA. But if we look at MI6 was run by a guy called Sir Peter Heyman. Sir Peter Heyman had connections with Pi. And Sir Peter Heyman got convicted of offences against children. He was head of MI6. You know, when the Pi list came out, there was a brigadier in the army. There was a head of a group called the Boys Brigade. One of the heads of that was named in it. There was one guy that was head of a charity to help families growing up in poverty. So if he's got access to the list of families growing up in poverty, he's got access then to people that are financially strapped, which therefore makes them vulnerable. And therefore, potentially, the children could be placed into respite care and hence back into the machine that will eat their souls, and abuse them. Because Dolphin Square, which was the parliamentary residence, it was the venue for a lot of young boys from care homes to be taken there to parties. I mean, this is highlighted by the testimonies of a man called Richard Kerr, who went on to 60 Minutes Australia and said he was taken from a kids' home in Belfast called Kincora, and he was taken to Dolphin Square and raped by politicians. There's a guy called Anthony Daly, who ended up as a male prostitute on the streets of London around the meat rack. And he writes in his book, Playland, exactly what happened. Young boys being viciously abused, not just raped, but viciously attacked and assaulted. And there have been investigations into child murder in that block, the parliamentary residence. So a few years ago, because of my campaigning, I was stopped in the street by an old colleague of mine, and he worked with me in central London. And the area where we worked, it covered Dolphin Square in Westminster. And he said, John, I need to talk to you. I've been trying to get hold of you. And he said, at the time, the police station that covered it was called Rochester Row. And there was, because of the amount of dignitaries and people of prominence that lived there would be security patrols. So there'd be a minibus for the police that would drive around checking on these addresses, right? That there's nothing suspicious, because the IRA were very prominent, and their lives were at risk. And, they part of their package for employment is that they get this police protection. So these checks are done, these security checks are done. And a lot of them lived in Dolphin Square. There were minicabs going in there early hours of the morning with young children in there from kids' homes, from South London and all sorts. And the security patrols kept stopping these cars. And the superintendent for Rochester Road dragged all the uniformed officers in and said, no one is to stop any car going in or out of Dolphin Square. If they do, that's it, they're in big trouble. So he's basically threatened. Well, where's his information come from? It's come from high up, because it could jeopardise the flow of young rent boys to feed, this demonic machine that is our parliament. I got given the name of 2 officers handed to me, and I took this to a parliamentary contact. I ended up having a meeting right in the heart with the Home Office, and I'd name of these 2 police officers, and they were the protection officers for Ted Heath. And Ted Heath, who was a prime minister who took England into Europe in the early 70s. And these officers, what they'd done was they were his protection, what called prot officers, they're protection officers. And late at night, taxis were coming in from children's homes, delivering young boys to his parliamentary residence at number 10. But back then you could drive right up to the gate, you know. And these officers knew what was going on. They knew these boys were being raped. And they discussed between themselves, what do we do? If they tell anyone, it won't go anywhere. If they, take it any higher, they'll get moved. So they did the best thing they could have done. They confronted Ted Heath. So they went up to him and said, right, it stops. And he said, rightly so, one of them said it did stop for 2 weeks. He knew what we was on about. For 2 weeks, no boys delivered. And 2 weeks later, they were both pensioned off, right? And they had their names and they were willing to speak out. So this is what we're seeing happen. And of course, if you take it any further, pretty much finished. So that's a British establishment for you. So let's go on. So you say about Epstein. Let's take it a bit further. Epstein's got a girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. She's a procurer. She's the main procurer, right? And I want to explain how the grooming process works, right? So there's children there. You need someone to go and get them. And with girls, you can have like a Romeo. So you're going to need a young lad. And this is what you're seeing with the Pakistani gangs. They've sort of got it down to a T. But it goes on all over. This is my point of variance with a lot of the alt-right campaigners about the grooming gangs, because they're predominantly Kashmiri Pakistanis. I'm like, no. This has been going on far before them boys were on the block. I've dealt with Albanian, Kosovan, Lithuanian, Jamaican, and women. And the first conviction ever of procuring children prostitution was a conviction that, I jointly got with a colleague against a woman called Fiona Walsh, aka Foxy. So if we link her in with like Ghislaine, again, very larger than life, quite attractive character, prostitute, but she would go around these young girls that were a little bit screw loop, from care homes or, vulnerable, whatever that might mean, but in need of a bit of comfort and a bit of compassion, a bit of love. And this Foxy would go in there and brush their hair for them, do their nails for them. And that was as simple as that. And then say, oh, come along, we're going to meet a guy. Then go and meet a Jamaican drug dealer, and they all found him funny, and they'd smoke a joint, All starts with a cannabis, No one can ever tell me that stuff is totally harmless, It has done more hooking people than anything, that has, it's a gateway for so much. But to get them on the cannabis, and then she'd then sit them down with a fella and they'll watch a porno. And then from there, the guy would then do something with her and the girl would watch. And then they'd get another man in who'd be a punter. And the girl would sit and watch this Foxy with the punter. And then watch her get the money and say, well, why don't you have a guy? Go, you'll get more money because you're younger. And she'll be, I don't know. Now go and have a go. And of course, that's what'll happen. I'll be with you. And the guy will pay £200 or whatever to shag this little girl, 11 years old. And then that's it. Well, look, half the money. You have half, I have half. And then the little girl does it. And then it's like, well, look, we'll go to this other place. And then she'll take us to a crack house. And then start passing around the boys in a crack house, but giving her a bit of crack as well. And that's it. That's it. Like the song by the Stranglers, that Golden Brown, it's you're on the ship and you're tied to the mast. Now she's on that ship and she's tied to the mast now. But what they do then is they say, do you want to earn a bit more money? Well, that little girl you hang around with, so why don't she come along? Because her friend will be in trouble, her friend will be in a kid's home or whatever, and they get their friend along. It's the same algorithm. And this was in the council estates of central London, right? It was exactly the same what was doing in the opulence of Little St. James. Exactly the same. I know it because it's an algorithm. I know how these people work. And I know that these are broken people. And I now know the value. And I got threatened and warned because the girl that was running it, she was in with coppers. There were coppers involved with it. There was high up management coppers involved. There was a judge involved, right? And that's where the threat come on me. It's no different from anything else, right? Had I been dirty, they'd have bought my silence early doors. That's it. Ain't going any further, right? So what did they want from me? Probably wanted me to commit suicide. I don't know. Maybe these people do commit suicide, but dead men tell no tales, and it's as simple as that. So when we look at Ghislaine Maxwell, well, who is she? Who is she? She's the daughter of a Czech Ukrainian Ashkenazi Jew, which his name was Jan Ludwig Hock. A family of itinerant illiterates. There was 9 of them. They're just basically Jewish gypsies from a very impoverished village in, the old sort of Russian occupied part of that southeastern Europe, They were despised, and so they had to make their money any way they could. And, and it was basically, the dad was a hawker, selling anything he could. And Robert Maxwell changed his names 4 times. He left when he could, made his way through Europe and become occupied, and he ended up fighting for the Allied forces. And after his 4th name change, come up with the name Robert Maxwell. A broken man, but did very, very well, but started working for Israeli intelligence from a very early time. And they reckon he changed the narrative of science, because the Germans were very advanced in science, and because of what they did, they had no voice for many, many years. I know under Operation Paperclip, a lot of the American scientists did go out, Mengele, Hess and all these sort of lot, and the fellow who invented the V2 rocket and things like that did end up in America and Argentina and places like that. But apart from that, the others, they couldn't do anything. So he set up a publishing company which was funded by MI6 to get the information off the Germans, him being a Jew, get the information off the Germans and then put it into publications which were then manipulated and altered. So he actually altered the narrative of science for many years. And he did so well at it that's how he got into publishing. And he was just a deceptive liar. He was a storyteller and a nasty, nasty, horrible man, obsessed with power and money. And he was very abusive to his children, right? Now, he went on to have 9 kids like his father, but one of his kids ended up in a coma and then died after a car accident. And so the mother, Elizabeth, put all the effort into this dying son and forgot about Ghislaine. So she's now growing up, right, with abandonment and rejection issues. And her father was very abusive to her. So how is she any different to Lord Nicholas Fairbairn? Very, very similar. She then gets sent off to these elitist schools, boarding schools at a very young age. Well, what did that do to her? Probably the same as what it did to Nicholas Fairbairn. She's a very emotionally broken and spiteful women. And she was classed as an abuser. And when women abuse, so 90% of all sexual abuse goes unreported. 80% of it occurs within the home environment. 9 out of 10 abusers are men, but 1 in 10 is a woman. And when women abuse, it's done with a spitefulness 6 times out of a man. It's very callous, it's very cold, and also women have a need to be venerated, to be exalted. So it's like, we used to always call it, what do we call it? Women with rank in the police. Those high up senior officers that were women were always nasty bastards. Right, there's a need to one of the men senior officers might be say hello to him, but woman, hello ma'am, you'd have to respect their rank. They're very much into that, and they do that when they abuse. They have to be respected. They command respect. It's some of these very bizarre things that come out of it. Anyway, when we look at Ghislaine Maxwell, she was very much of that ilk. And she's got him with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, again, look at him. He's come from nothing. And he ends up in this Bear Sachs, stock trading company. Does incredibly well there, and off he goes in to earn him billions all of a sudden over nothing. And he's caught up with all sorts of bizarre wrongdoing. and then ultimately he's caught 2006 for procuring young girls for prostitution. And he goes away for that of a 14-year-old girl, and the man's a paedophile. And of course, he's connected to our royal family. And there's connections with the Israeli intelligence service, like there is with Robert Maxwell. So what is this guy doing? Well, he's doing no different to Jimmy Savile. He's procuring children for these broken people. Whether they've come from inherited wealth, they come from title backgrounds, or they're self-made people, there's going to be a lot of damaged people there. Now, there's a guy called Russel Brand, and he's made a name for himself about 10 years ago as the whistleblowing Dutch banker. He was a billionaire banker in the merchant sort of scene. And he talks about doing well in the banking on a low level, and then he's recognised for his ruthlessness because he comes from an abused background, was sexually abused by his father, and a broken man. But you find a lot of these CEOs are very broken people anyway, and there's a nastiness about them, A bit like we were saying with these elite regiments, people that are very broke. I'm not saying they're nasty, I'm not down quite, but you will see a stronger percentage in these extreme environments than you will in a mild environment. And he ends up, because of his ruthlessness in business, being pushed forward and forward. And he said it starts off with going to parties where there's an orgy, wife swapping. And then from there, young girls are brought in. And he said from there, small children are brought in. And he said, and then from there, it becomes satanic with child sacrifice. So if we look at this little St. James, this island that he's bought, he's got all this property, hasn't he, Jeffrey Epstein? He's got places all around the world. He's got a private jet that flies 150 people at a time. He's got a landing strip. He owns the boats, the helicopters, and the jet that goes to that island. So he's got total control and autonomy there. And also, it's quite ritualistic. There's some Egyptian temple there, almost like the Temple of Baal, And the Temple of Baal worship was what Jesus protested about that the Israelites were doing. They were sacrificing their children to these gods, Moloch and things like that. And very similar things were seen on that island, very occultic, ritualistic abuse. There was also a maze there, and if anyone who's researched into the occult, that tends to go alongside with a labyrinth, will go alongside with ritual abuse, and that there was a labyrinth there. And so he catered for people at all level. I would say the heart of it, and again, I don't know, never been there, nothing's been contrary to it, but it's not just teenage girls. Why are they giving us up Virginia Dufresne as the 16-year-old? No. There's references of 14-year-old. No. There's no references whatsoever of anyone under 10, although some of the victims have inferred that. And there's nothing to do with boys, and there would have been. I'm telling you now, there'll be boys, there'll be primary school age children there, and I'm almost certain there'll be a ritualistic connotation to this as well. And that is what they don't want getting out. Like I said to you earlier, there's certain things we can accept. And we can accept, right, that these men had affairs with 16-year-old girls, or they call it sleeping. We weren't. She was shagging 16-year-old girl. We might not agree with it, but we can accept it because our law says that that's allowed. But it's wrong, and it's a low-hanging fruit, and that's all they're giving us, a low-hanging fruit. And the fact is, once you pick that scab, you're going to see something very, very dark and very, very sinister, right? But they have to control the narrative, and this is what you're seeing now, controlling the narrative. Jeffrey Epstein had gone past his sell-by date. He's gone. He's finished, right? She won't die. She won't be killed. Ghislaine Maxwell. She's too connected, too powerful, too high up. I think the Israeli government will protect her all the way. She'll be a dual passport holder. She'll have Israeli status. Probably Epstein did as well, but he was going to go, and there's many others that will go. I think his partner, is it Jean-Luc Bernard or whatever his name was, the guy ended up in prison in Paris. He ended up hanging himself as well. But
do you buy, sorry to interrupt, do you buy that, John? The suicide?
no,
Epstein,
not
you
at
think
all.
that was-
No, not at all. And let me move this on a bit. Let's make it homegrown. So what we got with Jeffrey Epstein, we had a version in the UK. We had a Poundland version of it, right? A bargain basement version of it, right? Of Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell. We had Fred and Rose West. Exactly the same.
Going, but yeah,
exactly
sense.
the same. Fred and Rose West, they were procuring children. There's so many deaths around them people. Fred was alleged to be involved in what's called the Barn Club. When you look at ritualistic abuse, barns are a big venue. There were bodies found hanging in various barns that he had jurisdiction over, because he used to do this circuit of farm labouring. There was people found hanging in these barns. There was corpses found that had ritualistic connotation, where the heads would be taped up, fingers would be missing, hands would be cut off. So he had a dirty video club, which it was alleged that there was local senior police officers were involved in it. Definitely a swinging scene going on there, and local detectives were going up to his bar in his house called the Voodoo Bar and shagging his horrible Mrs. Rose. So he got them all in on it. The only reason he ever came to notice was the child protection officer. She knew something weren't right, and there was paedophilic activity going on around him and his missus. So she went and got a warrant. Now, a warrant needs to be signed by an inspector, right? They wouldn't sign the warrant. So she forged a signature and got the power to enter and search, and that's when they found the bodies. Had she not done that incredibly bold move, which good on her for doing it, does that make it dishonest? No, it don't. No, because you know the ends justify the means on that one. 950 videotapes were seized, all purported and believed to be homemade pornos, right? Not one was ever cited in evidence, not one. They all went missing. So we see the same. They're procurer of children. The children is a currency, and it isn't about the 16-year-old massaging Prince Andrew's foot. No. This goes deeper, and this is, I would say, that island is a hive like Jersey, like Haute de la Garenne, the kids' home in Jersey. There's a senior police officer, probably one of two police officers that I highly respect as whistleblowers. One's called Mike Veal. He spoke out about Ted Heath. And the other one's called Lenny Harper, and he spoke out about the island of Jersey. And he went out from Strathclyde Police out to Jersey on a secondment to look into claims that children went missing in this kids' home. The Channel Islands are very, very bizarre places. They still have a feudal system going where the landed gentry have autonomy over everything. And the children of the heirs and the peers and the lords and ladies of Jersey, they're born with the right to police the people without any training. So they become the honourable police force of Jersey. No training, nothing. They're given a uniform. They're just sent out, and they're allowed to do it. Nowhere in the world would you have that. They even had one guy. He'd been in prison for rape. Because he was the son of a lord, he was still a serving police officer. Jersey, this is the UK, And this kid's home, there were rumours that children were murdered there. They were taken from the mainland, from kids' homes over here, out to an island. Well, where are you going to go? Who's going to hear your screams on an island? No way, right? They were taken into the basement of this place, and they weren't just raped. They were ritually abused and murdered and tortured in sadistic sex games. Right, that was the claims. The basement where it all went on, the survivors, those who did survive and some escaped, said you'll find blood up the walls. It was always covered in blood. There's some handcuffs above a bath, and there was weird rituals went on, and kids were murdered in this bath. And what happened is the sewer pipe had been diverted and sent into the basement, and it'd been flooded with sewage. So it's full up as shite piss and everything else. So Lenny Harper took in a team, a bit like Time Team. He had archaeologists and anthropologists, and bit by bit, spoon by spoon, they excavated that place. They took along the best cadaver dog in the world, right? And the dog indicated human remains. The archaeologists found them, and the anthropologists identified them, said these are infant remains, probably of a child aged 4 to 5 or something like that, right? Bagged them up, loads of bits of skull, everything. As they went deeper down, they found blood. The dog indicated blood, human blood on a wall. As described, they found the handcuffs, they found the bath with blood. All them years of poo and piss in there, they found it, right? They had it. And if you look at the old Sky News footage, Lenny Harper, he's there, he's a man on a mission, and he's given it to him. We've uncovered it. But there was rumours that the good and the great of Jersey and many others were flown in for these parties. Exactly the same as this island, exactly in so many ways. But Trump's controlling the narrative, you see. He's just saying, oh, it's my friend who just likes young girls. And it's bullshit. They don't give you that wealth. Anyway, Lenny Harper sent the bone off to get forensic verification at the police lab. The bag was sent off. It was interfered with. It was diverted to a different laboratory, not used before by the police. And the report that come back was it was coconut shell. Lenny Harper was then threatened with arrest. They threatened to take his granddaughter into care, thrown off the island. Well, where have we heard that before? Where have we heard it before? You know, and Trump now is lying. He's lying to his own people. This will bring down the Trump administration. This could bring down financial powerhouses. This could bring down the British royal family. Well, good, in my opinion. Good, they need it. But the damage this could do if it's not stopped here and now, you know, and anyone who pokes their nose in, they could say, oh, we're going to have an FBI inquiry into this. Where will it go? It'll go nowhere. It's the same as our ICSA inquiry. It'll go nowhere. You've got to look at the benefit. Who benefits? Who benefits? Jeffrey Epstein benefited in the sum of billions. Ghislaine Maxwell the same in sum of billions, right? You know, Prince Andrew lied to a nation. Blatantly sat there and lied to a nation.
It's one of the worst interviews I think I've ever watched.
It's cringeworthy. It's insulting. He's just lying, you know, and he's just denying it. And then he's saying, oh, I'm convinced it wasn't me. Even his language, I'm convinced. Yeah, you have convinced yourself it wasn't you. But it effing well was you.
The talks of the photo being photoshopped and tampered with as well.
Well, he said it could be. It's a photo of a photo of a photo, you know, and he's just lying. And then he's making this nonsense up about being in a Pizza Express and that he doesn't sweat and he's never been in Tramp's nightclub and he's never, you know, never bought a drink in his life. I forgot about
the sweat comments.
He's lying. But what happened? COVID come along, it went away. Let's not see if something happens, you know, on a national or even an international level, that's maybe a war will occur. Well, they bombed this morning, the Russians have bombed Kiev. Maybe that will escalate, you know. We've now got our Prime Minister saying 16-year-olds can vote. Well, the only reason he's saying that is if you can vote, you can be conscribed. That's the only reason they're doing it. And then where's the focus gone? It's gone away from something. It is sexual abuse of children and the ritualistic murder of children, the sacrifice of children. If we take it to this crazy conspiracy Jon Wedger level, that is the fuel that runs this demonic global machine. Don't look any further. It's what it is, you know. And look, St. Paul in his letters to the Ephesians, he told us, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against wickedness and principalities in high office. He's telling us the wickedness in high office because this is what these people want. What can they buy you with? The thing is with me, they couldn't buy me with anything. I got offered a bribe by the Turkish Mafia because I caused a lot of problems for them. I was very successful. I don't like blowing me on trumpet and all that stuff, but I was just very successful. And there was a lot of jealousy came my way because I was getting a lot of people to talk and a lot of heroin was being seized, right? Huge amounts, right? And so there was rumours coming out from an undercover officer that they was going to get me shot. So £40,000 was put up to have me shot in the head. And a guy, he agreed. He said, I'll do it. I'll take this job on. But before that went on, they thought, one last try, we'll try and bribe him. So I was invited to a meeting by a solicitor to discuss bail terms for a guy I had on bail. And I ended up going to a police station in central London to meet with this guy that's on bail, Turkish gangster, and his solicitor, who was an ex-copper. And during the meeting, the solicitor gets up and walks out and says, "Oh, I'm going for a cigarette." And I went, "Oh, I'll come with you." And he went, "No, stay with my colleague." And he's happy for me to stay with his colleague. And I, no, he's on bail and I shouldn't be meeting this guy. It's a no-no, right? But I said, "Are you all right with that?" I'm thinking maybe he's come to give me some info. That I can deal with. And I thought, okay, he's going to talk, right? Nice one. And my sister went, yeah. And then next thing, the guy gets out £4,000 and gives it to me. £4,000, counts it out. So you went, I was poor, very, very poor, bringing up kids on my own, and I was in trouble financially. And he went, it will help you and your children. I went, I fucking don't want that. He went, no, tomorrow I'll give you the rest. By the end of tomorrow, you'll have 80,000, because that's what they were making in one day, 80,000 pounds a day. That was he said, but you got to fuck off now, John. And I wouldn't take it. So the death threat went forwards, and that became a very real thing, very real. But there was nothing they had I wanted, and I wasn't going to be, had I taken that bribe, my narrative would be so different. I needed that money, even the £4,000, thinking, well, I'll go on holiday, do this, but I didn't want it. It was weird. I don't care for cars, the casinos. I did a lot of work for them. I investigated a lot of crime for the casinos. I saved them millions and millions, and they used to reward me with dinners. And I get taken to the Ritz, places like Crockford's Casino, and all these nice ones in Berkeley Square, and all these big posh places, for dinner. And the meal could be up to £2,000 for a meal. And I didn't fucking want it. In the end, I stopped going. I didn't want it. There was nothing they had I wanted. They just couldn't do it to me, And the same when you was in Vice, you would get some of the prostitutes would offer you gratuities. They would offer it to you. That's where people do falter. Like, no matter who you are, there's something there for you. There was, we used to raid brothels, right? I'm going to give you an example of how it works. So you go into a brothel looking for children, right? So I would go in as a punter. I'd ring them up and ask them what girls they got. And they used to have them in the newspapers. They used to advertise sauna. There's always sauna, massage and sauna. And if they had an 18-year-old, there's a good chance they'd be 16, So I'd say, who we got? I know we got stupid names. We've got Jenny, she's 18, she does all their tit size and her waist size and all that, and then we've got so-and-so and they'd name them. Oh yeah, can I have so-and-so? I'll be in an hour. So you make an appointment, go down there. And as you go through the door, there'll be the madam there, and you'd have to pay like a house fee, 10 or 20 quid, whatever. And go out and give them money. So go give them money. I'd put my foot in the door and all the boys would steam in, and then we'd just smash our way through the building, detaining everyone and looking for the kids. So by the time we all got in, they pretty much couldn't run out, we'd have it all contained. So that's how we could do 3 of them a day, hitting them. And then one day they said, right, we're going to a place called Earl's Court, which is quite a notorious sort of gay area. Brompton, West Brompton, around there. There's a big gay cruising place. They all sort of meet in the cemetery and do their thing. And there's a long-standing male brothel there. It's been there years. One of the old guys on the Vice said, mate, it's been here as long as I've been here, right? And it does crop up in quite a few of these books about politicians and rent boys and all that. So, right, said, right, we're going to raid this brothel. So we have a briefing. We always have quite a complex briefing. But the rules were totally different because it was boys. We couldn't go rushing in there. What we had to do, get this as a comparison. I'd knock on the door. A guy who works in there would open it. I'd have to then show him my police badge. So we're here to raid the place. He'd shut the door. He'd ring his solicitor. The door would open again. How many of you are there? Would say, let's 10 of us. We were then brought into a lobby area. served tea and biscuits, and we waited an hour for his solicitor to turn up. And then the solicitor, accompanied with the solicitor, we would then do a systematic search from one room at a time through the building. Whoever goes out the back door has gone out the back door an hour ago, right? Because it was boys and because there were people of prominence going there, and that was deemed acceptable. Well, it's corruptible. It's not acceptable because it's our weakness, boys, little boys, you know? And it's the same story, no matter where in the world you are, the same old story all the time. Look at Grenville Janner, Lord Grenville Janner. He came to popularity, especially amongst the Israeli community, for he was a Nazi hunter. So after he become a politician, but he went round there tracking down Nazis, you know, and he got loved by his kinfolk. But he was a predatory paedophile. He was a Lord Grenville Janner. And he was going into, he had the keys to a kids' prison, a young offenders institute called Glenparva. He was always going in there and fiddling with boys. There was something like 80 allegations of young men made against him. And when the police arrested him, although he was still claiming his £300 a day attendance fee to vote in the House of Lords, he claimed he had Alzheimer's and couldn't remember anything. How convenient. How convenient. And then when the file got lost, and then again got lost, and then the police resubmitted it, there was loads and loads of fiddling about. Coppers were moved on, everything else. But it then goes before a judge, and the judge deems him too ill to stand trial. You couldn't make it up. It is the biggest. And who stood by him? Keith Vaz. Keith Vaz tried to back the police off. Keith Vaz was in charge of the Home Affairs Select Committee that deals with any wrongdoing within government. He sits in this panel and all that. And he was caught out in a sting with Rent Boys by the Daily, the Mirror, Sun paper, you know, cocaine and Rent Boys, Keith Vaz.
Do you think based on these algorithms and these patterns you've seen, John, because obviously I'm going to ask you a couple of sort of well-known cases that have come to light. Obviously, the P Diddy trial. He seems, because he seemed like he was banged to rights, and now he's got essentially a slap on the wrist.
But again, look at him, right? When you arrest these people, you break them down. You call yourself Puff Daddy. Well, what's that synonymous with? Puff. I mean, I don't know what the Americans, the colloquialism for cannabis is, but here it's Puff, and if we make it basic, Puff Daddy. Well, it's a bit pimpy, isn't it? You know, Puff Daddy. His name is Sean Combs. He's an ugly bastard, you know? That is not a good-looking man. He's got into the music industry, but look at his lineage. His father was a small-time gangster who was absent from his home. He had an overbearing mother, right? There was a very unhealthy relationship between Sean Combs and his mother. He self-proclaimed lost his virginity at the age of 12 years old. And then he said he was addicted to porn by 14. Well, this is a highly sexualised young boy with quite an Oedipal relationship with his mother, right? Very dysfunctional, very broken, straight away. And look at how he dresses. You know, he dresses like a gay pimp. You know, big white chinchilla coats and all that. I mean, you've got to look at these things as they are. And then when they interviewed him, he then become P Diddy, which may be a bastardisation of Puff Daddy. And then the last thing he self-proclaimed as God, was referring to himself as God. I mean, if that's not a delusion of grandeur, but again, what is he? He was just, say, a pimp. Look, there was a saying, wasn't it? What happens at Diddy party stays at Diddy party. Well, let's break that down then. How does that work? I mean, what party have you ever been to where you're too ashamed or frightened to say what went on? I'm not. I mean, someone might have got fingered or something like that. I don't know what the vernacular is, but you never walk away scratching everything, you know, better never say anything again. What point do you shut your mouth? Especially with the entertainment industry, which is all weird anyway, for them to be no holds barred, you know, and then proclaim it, you know, cameras everywhere and all that. Of course, he was evidence gathering, wasn't he? That's all he was. He was an evidence gatherer. You know, the same old thing. And I said on a podcast, I said, listen, I know how this is going to work. They're going to say, no stone unturned. The FBI are going to look into this and they'll be flooded by victims. Of course they are. They're just controlling a mad environment. Nothing will happen, right? He's an informant. I'm telling you now. You've got to know how this works. When someone's in trouble, right, they get arrested. So I'll take it from the mafia, the drug scene, right? Someone gets arrested with a kilo of heroin, right? Big trouble. You're going away, mate. You're screwed, right? That's it. So that you interview them, no comment, but you've got enough, and that's that. They're going away. It's a huge amount. It's intent to supply, right? 15 years, right? You're looking at 15 years. So they get banged up, and that's it. And at the end of your shift dealing with them, you say, well, you need to talk to me. We can lessen this blow. They tell you to F off, I'm not talking. All these criminals come this about grassing. Who is of any use to the police as an informant? Well, a straight going person isn't, right? A criminal is. All grasses are criminals. That's why I couldn't do these podcasts, and I listen to these people. Oh, I only got 2 years. Well, yeah, because you're grass, mate. That's why. I know how it works, giving it all that rubbish. The criminals are the most selfish people. Me and you go to work. We pay our taxes, right? They don't. They just lounge around doing sod all, get up when they want, and then nick other people's. And all this about we leave straight goers alone. Absolute rubbish. How else do you get your money if it ain't from a straight going person? It's just bullshit. I don't buy it. It's a load of lies. It's rubbish, right? So that guy will sit there and he's on remand. And I tell you what, you give it a week when they're on remand, that phone goes. Off it goes, your informant ring, and you'll say, can they come to Wormwood Scrubs? Can you come and meet me? I say, all right, I'll do a legal visit, right? Legal visit, solicitor, no one knows who I am. I'll just say I'm your solicitor. You've got to accept it. And then you go along there and you say, right, what you giving me? Oh, well, I'll give it. No, you've got to give me bigger and better than what you're involved in. It's got to be bigger and better. It's got to end up in a conviction. Then and only then will we help you. Oh, no, anyway, go away, come back. Yeah, all right. And they give you your next man up. And you do it so they're distanced by 2 to 3 people away from the source of information. So it's called provenance. You can't. If what happened in this room today got out and got discussed, it's only either come from you or your cameraman, right? So the provenance is so slow. So you've got to make sure that there's a few people involved, and then it pays off. You say, right, well, we can work with you. Let's keep this going, and that relationship builds, and that's what happens. But the moment they come in, they get dropped. So he's given them everything he wanted, old Puff Daddy. But when it starts going on to that level where it involves national security, that's out of the police's hand. That goes to intelligence services, and they then step in. But a deal's been brokered, and that information has now been managed because it's going higher and higher and higher. And he'll probably walk away what they call time served. Time served, minimum sentence. Because I've done it to people. They've walked out. One guy rings me up, and we did a deal, right? And he gets 2 years. He should have got 15. And then the next thing I get a call from prison, and he's got to serve about a month left. And he's screaming, and I hate you, and I'm going to kill you when I get out. And I'm like, what's the matter? And I said, come and see you. I'm going to kill you. Oh, you're a dead man. So what have I done? I've got you 2 years. He went, yeah, it got me 2 years, but everyone knows I'm a grass. He said, I've had the shit kicked out of me. They broke his arm. They smashed him to pieces because he got 2 years. I'm like, well, he's definitely a grass, isn't he? So how it works then, if there's 2 of us involved in a conspiracy and I fold and you don't, but I grass you up, right? So what happens, it goes before a court. And on the first day of trial, I go up to the judge. No one's in the court. And I arrange a meeting with the judge. I walk in and I give him an envelope with a form in there called a text. It's a form. And it just says, so-and-so, under the pseudonym of this, has given information, he's co-defendant in this case. The information is good, it's solid, it should result in a conviction. This man is of potential use to the country, right? can that be taken into consideration? Respectfully submitted for your consideration, were the words. And the judge looks at it, okay. So it goes in and people thinks he's just a defendant. He'll go, no comment, but he's working with us. His co-D don't know, but we know, right? And the jury don't know. And that's that. And if the prosecution or the other side, the co-D's solicitor starts asking questions that might reveal his identity, they shut the case down. And they do a thing called a PII, so kick the jury out for a legal argument. And then they'll say to that barrister, you are not to ask any more questions relating to that. Right, so when the jury come back, no more questions about, right, and they don't. So we control everything. But the jury see it as an open trial, and so would the press see it as an open trial. It's an honest trial, but it ain't. We're holding a thing called a PII, public interest immunity. It's banned in Europe, but we do it a lot here. And it's secret little bargains with the other side. It's unbelievable. People knew the games that we play, right, or we have played, right? And then the judge has got an issue. They've got to be found guilty. But if I give him 15, him 2, okay, no, that ain't right. So I'll say, right, 15 years for you, 15 years for you. Job done. But that ain't fair, is it? Because our man's helped us. He's got nothing. But what he's told is, give it a month, you put him for an appeal, right? The other guy puts in for an appeal. He don't get it. He gets it. Bound. Goes to the higher court. Court of appeal upheld. 2 years. That's it. Quash, bang, off you go. And that's how you see it. That's how it works.
So based on that, and I'm just conscious of time here, John, but based on that, how do you see, obviously, Andrew Tate, who we mentioned off camera, he was under the firing line with his antics in Romania. I'm not fully up to speed with where he's at now. And then also one that came to light that I don't know if it was necessary with minors, but you can maybe push back if that isn't the case. Russel Brand.
Oh, Russel Brand. Yeah. So Andrew Tate, of course, he's had this meteoric rise, you know. But what is he? He's a damaged man. I mean, I don't know him. I don't know him personally. I'm only going on what he portrays. He's someone who can't really control his emotion. Highly intelligent, done incredibly well physically. Again, what boxes is he ticking? The intellectual box ticked, the physical box ticked. Emotionally, that's a damaged man. And if someone of reasonable firmness can't see that guy's emotionally stunted, there's got to be something wrong. You know, his arguments are ridiculously immature. One podcast I was listening to, he said, would you rather have Hulk Hogan with a vagina or some other woman actress who's got a penis? And this guy's going, what? He said, come on, serious question. Would you rather have... And I'm thinking, are you inferring you're gay here? Is there's something not right about it. And I watched this documentary BBC did at him, you know, of this Pimp Academy or whatever he had. This, I don't know what it's called. What do they call him? What's it? Something? Oh, I can't even remember it. Anyway, this misogynistic sort of academy where people are paying 30 grand to go on his course.
I know what him and his brother organised. It'll come to me. Go on.
Yeah. It's Pimp,
something like Cobra.
Pimp,
something.
And he was sitting there smoking a cigar, watching men in their underpants wrestling. I'm thinking, there's something homoerotic about this. It's the way he treats women and all that. There's definitely an issue with women here. Maybe he's got rejection issues because of his mother, and maybe his mother's not protected him. His value system, he was interviewed. Again, you know, this is what we would do. We would have to look for people's value system. What are they valuing, right? A man of my age should not be wanting to go on a private jet, have a threesome, right, with 2 prostitutes, drink champagne and eat pizza, right? I just want to walk my dog.
It's a 12-year-old's fantasy, isn't it? Yeah.
So his value system is that of a child, which leads me to believe, again, I don't know the fella, leads me to believe something occurred in his growing up that has stopped his emotional clock, which has made him tell the world how clever he is and how strong he is at the same time. He's going by a bit of a pattern here, but his value system is very immature. And the way that he loses it as well, and he has to dominate and all that, and his attitude towards women is prehistoric. It's you know, and it's pimpy. And it is. I mean, I'm only getting what I see. it looks very pimpy. And of course he's going to appeal to men because we have a society of young men who've been brought up without fathers. It's as simple as that. There's a really interesting thing in Glasgow. They call their scrotes Neds, right? Non-educated delinquents or delinquent scum, right? Neds, right? And Glasgow always, was known for its tough working class upbringing and all that, and poverty and razor fighting and all that. But it's a strong, tough, guttural language. So they couldn't work out how these new Neds got this high pitched squeal, real high pitched squealies. And I'm thinking, where's that come from? And they looked into it. So they got a few people that's their social science is looking into it, and they found out it's because of single parenting. A lot of them were brought up in these big, tall flats in the absence of a father, but a neurotic, drug addict mum, who all their kids hear is squealing. There was a village out in Gloucestershire where the women had a high-pitched sort of squeal, and they couldn't work out why. Well, the only employer in that village was a big chicken factory, and all the women heard all day was chickens going, beep, 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 and it caused them to almost mimic it. And they ended up with this because you adapt your environment, and this is what's sort of happening. These are kids growing up with the value system of a woman and not of a man. They'll kill someone for treading on their trainers, getting dirt on their trainers. Well, what man would do that? Men are meant to get mud on their trainers, but you see them now, they're all preened and like P Diddy with a white chinchilla coat on. Well, that's what a girl would wear, in our day. You get beaten up for wearing that. I saw a young black lad the other day wearing a pink tracksuit. Well, go back to the 70s, mate, you'd have been headbutted, walking along with a pink tracksuit on. I had no reason to believe the guy was gay or anything, but that's what it would have been synonymous with years ago. Because there's a feminisation, because there's an absence of men. So, of course, he's going to appeal to them. And what's their way out of it? It is the Bugatti and all that. It's like that sort of, you ask a kid from the inner city what they want to be, a footballer. Because it's I want to be like Messi, I want to be like Ronaldo, I want to, do you know what I mean? Because that's what they want or aspire to. And they see Andrew Tate as a hero. And, he ain't.
What's that famous thing with the Bugatti? What colour's your Bugatti?
What a nonsense. What an absolute...
I just think it comes across incredibly narcissistic.
Broken. Broken, childish and broken. He can have all the money in the world. So what? But there's something very, very pimpy about him, and I think that will probably come out. I think at some point one of them will stick. But Russel Brand is another one. Look,
I'm going to make a claim here. I liked Russel Brand when he was a comedian.
Right.
And I'd bought into the found his shtick quite funny. Yeah. Granted, I was a teenager, so a lot of the sex gags probably, right. I was that 12-year-old wannabe Andrew Tate, let's say. But as time's gone on, I don't know. I've not say I dislike the guy, but my opinion's kind of not of what it used to be.
Oh, I can't stand him.
Okay.
I think he's abhorrent, and look, he's a vernacular man, so I'm going to be vernacular. He's been sucking the devil's willy all his life, and now he don't like the taste. And that's how I see it. His journey to Christianity is very convenient, in my opinion. Is that a get out of jail free? I think it is. I think that's his insurance policy.
That's only recent, that, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's his insurance policy. I think this man has got a lot of skeletons in the closet. I can't see that as a man of God, and I pick up a very horrible vibe off him. I don't like him at all. I think he's a very, very broken man. And again, I think something's probably gone on in his life, and at times quite effeminate. It's quite mixed messages with him, and he does this messianic grandstanding as well, and I did listen to, because again, highly intelligent, without a doubt, the IQ of a genius, but
I often find with Russell, sorry to interrupt there, that he over-articulates, and I often think when people over-articulate, are they trying to confuse you with the intelligence of what they're actually saying?
Well, that was always a theory about big words when it sort of gentry could to do it. But everything he does is sexualised. And it carried on and on and on, thinking, and he was knocking around, and I think, as a matter of fact, with a 16-year-old girl, wasn't he? And he's a grown man. What's he doing with that? All the women he could have. And it just seems to see the same with Tate, all these young girls. Look, someone said something to me once. He said, it was a survivor of a care home. He went, you'll see him, same with his doorman, always got these young girls with him. He said, because they can't F a mature woman. They can't do it. So that's why they do it with the young girls. There's something big with the young girls because they've never had a decent shag in their life with a mature woman, and they can't. They have to hang around with these naive little girls. And you see the same all the time. I don't like him. And I did quite a long interview with Sean Atwood. I called Russel Brand a dog. And I'm not buying his trip to Christianity. I'm not buying it at all. I see something sinister in his eyes, and I don't think it's good. And he's on trial at the moment. And
how do you see that playing out? Given
well, there's 5 charges against him, isn't there? I think one's the old Historic Sexual Offences Act, and 4 of them of the new ones. So there's oral rape, isn't there? There's rape. I think there's one of rape under the old offence, and there's a couple under the new and oral rape. So I think he's going to be found guilty of some of that. The wheels of justice are very slow, so wait and see. But Christianity and all that. He was married to Katy Perry, who was a self-proclaimed Satanist. How's that work? And then he married one of the Rothschilds, didn't he? I mean, if we look at Christianity, right, there was a tax man invited Jesus along to his house and said, I want to follow you. And Jesus said, well, sell what you've got and follow me then. He went, well, I don't want to follow you that much. Well, look at all the money Russel Brand's got. Where's his Christian benevolence? Why is he not? There's a guy, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was involved in drug dealing and all sorts, but he became a Christian. And with the wealth and all that, he went out to Tanzania and he started building children's homes for autistic and disabled kids. And he dedicated his life to doing it. He's really doing God's work. I don't see any of that Christian benevolence with Russel Brand. I don't see it at all. So I do this, my documentary, Redemption, like Donald Trump with his Christian values and this MAGA rubbish. Well, the devil speaks a language of lies. His language is deception, and Jesus said, by their fruits shall you know them. Not their words. Don't listen to their words, their fruits. When I did the documentary Redemption, it was, guys, you can see their fruits. Their fruits are quite clear what they're doing. It's not words. They are actually doing it. Chris Lambrianou is nearly pushing 90. He spends every bit of spare time doing what he can to put right, the ills of his past. He said, I will die doing God's work. So having hung around with born-again Christians and things like that, and some that have been involved in crime and that, you sort of get a feeling from them, You look at when Danny Dyer interviews Stephen French, and he's talking to him and he says, I was a devil and I can summon it in an instant, and he does this instant. You can see, wow, mate, you're a bit dangerous, you are. And you don't doubt that this is a man of his word. And then you listen to him on our documentary Redemption and other ones subsequently, you see this is a man who's changed. It has changed. Russel Brand, I don't see the change. So I'm not convinced.
So I've just got one last question, and then we'll tie into how people can link in and watch Redemption and what have you. So obviously, following for this conversation, I think it's quite apparent. You think Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? How deep is he in them? Yeah,
up to his neck. Balls deep, as they would say. Balls deep. Will it ever get out? No. No, because it will collapse his administration. Will the whole dirty empire ever get out? No. But it's a glimpse into that world. And I would say to people, look at the subtleties of this. Draw an inference from what is going on and people's reluctance to do the right thing. Remember, by their fruits, not their words. And it will speak volumes. This isn't a crime that comes out and finds you. You've got to look for it. And it's showing us everything. It's just going to be a cover-up. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff you spoke about last time has that algorithms followed through. Yeah, it is. And it's the same. It'll never change. Obviously people watching this. Watch what people do. not what they say. And there'll be some good people will demand justice. Right, where will they go? They won't go nowhere. They'll be silenced.
No. It's always thought-provoking with you, Jon. Yeah. Just quickly before we wrap up, how can people get hold of you? What's the best method?
I've got a website. Just put Jon Wedger in. There is a website on the Freedom platform, and I've got a guy who does that for me, so you get all my updated bits and pieces. Redemption under Jon Wedger in Vimeo is pay-per-view. Please, I urge anyone to watch that. And the money from that, we go on to make another one and a few more. So please buy that. I've got a book coming out called Ironic. Hopefully that'll be out before Christmas, but there's going to be a little bit of legal work on that one. And I'm always on YouTube and everything else. So I'm going to be doing my weekly, what they call a brew with a view. So please, Jon Wedger, I'm on YouTube. Like, subscribe, click the button and all that sort of stuff.
And we'll put all the links to that in the description. They'll have popped up on the screen throughout this interview as well.
And like all things, I want to call out to three groups. I want to call out to the victims and the survivors of abuse. Now is your time. In order for healing, you need justice. I think you might not get the justice you want, but there'll be exposure that's coming your way. And from that, there might be, little glimmers. Definitely there are these reparation schemes. If you're in care homes, it's coming out now, a bit like the insurance companies are doing it. They're doing it with the child abuse things. And it's pretty much a given that you could get a payout if you can prove you're on there. They're doing one with the ecclesiastical, the churches now are coming out. So, put in for it. It might not heal the wound totally, but it's a life-saving amount of money and it will take the sting out of it. But never give up. Remember, it's not your shame to carry. I urge all survivors, please speak out. Speak out. Even if police do nothing, the pressure of it will have to cause a change. You must speak out. I urge everyone to keep speaking out. Don't give up. Those that did it to you, they're cowards and they're weak. And I call out to the paedophile and I say, stop it. It was done to you, no doubt. Stop it now. Give yourselves up. Go to the police. Tell the police what you've done. Go to God. Tell God what you've done. Repent and grass up all those that were doing it with you. Right? That's the only way you put this right. You've done wrong. You've done wrong. It's time to do right. And I call out to all those that have gone to Satanism. You're worshipping a liar. Don't do it. He will abandon you. Give up. Go the only true way, and that's to God. So that's my three call outs, all the same. God bless all victims and survivors. And we've got to keep going. Now's our time. We've got a battle coming up. Binary issue. It's good v evil, and it's going to be quite clear soon. So no shades of grey now. It's going to present itself, and it's not good times, but we got to fight. And
you're doing God's work by doing this, Jon.
Yeah,
that wouldn't be an understatement, mate.
Amen. The winning side.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's always a powerful podcast with you, Jon. I mean, I could chat with you every other week. Those 2 hours for me have flew by. But obviously, we've come to wrap it up, mate. Have you had a good time?
Brilliant.
Feel like you've let off some steam. It's always a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much. All right. I've been Daniel Hodges. This has, of course, been the wise and powerful Jon Wedger. You've been listening to the Hodge-Cast. Take it easy. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we believe you can definitely take something away from today's guest. We couldn't attract guests such as this without a solid fan base. The best way we can grow this is through subscriptions. So, if you haven't already done so, can I please ask you hit that subscribe button and help us continue to put out content for you all to enjoy. Until next time.